start with the hi-hat. Just start hitting the hi-hat. Right after World War II. Japan's a parking lot. It's been bombed into virtually flat nothingness in most of the great big cities, and particularly Tokyo. Immediately after which, 250,000 GIs and American and Allied service guys and dependents and all of the support systems and everybody literally move right into town. So there's a major collision of cultures here. And this is where a lot of the language started to change. Even the word television, terebi, comes from, trying to say the word television. If you're saying salad, the word salad in Japanese is sarada, S-A-R-A-D-A, salad. It's somebody trying to say salad, but if you don't have the word L or the letter L in your alphabet, then, things are a little bit tough. So you start to, patrol car, patoka, that's literally out of the dictionary. So, this is where that comes from, that collision of culture. And if you see pictures of Tokyo, it was virtually flat. I call it a parking lot. Most of it was destroyed by, the aerial carpet bombing, etc. That's what brought about the end of the war ultimately and started the new version of Japan, which virtually was an outdoor market. If you see photos of it, you talk to people who were survivors from that time period, and that's all grandparents kind of age. My Uncle Manny remembers all of this vividly, is you had something like 50, 60,000 outdoor stalls and carts and, upended boxes with people cooking chicken on a skewer and selling whatever, you could possibly scrounge together and sell. Think outdoor shopping mall, 1940s, early 1950s style. Everybody has to kind of live together outdoors. It's a big outdoor kind of like homeless village. Enter organized crime. Okay, we're the only kinds of people who can control the population, particularly after dark when electricity is kind of sketchy, and who has the money for bulbs and wires, et cetera, et cetera. People are getting drunk on homemade sake and homemade gin at night, regardless, because the weather is horrifying there. Land of the gods is also the land of tears, man. It's in the middle of the summer, it's complete jungle in this unbelievably humid, stinking hot. In the middle of the winter, it snows. So you have everybody virtually living outdoors together. You have a lot of people who are unfamiliar with living outdoors. Hey, when was the last time you spent a few weeks living outdoors? And I don't mean you went to the bathroom indoors. I don't mean that you had a shower that you could use. Me neither. It's been a while. Living outdoors is an acquired art form, and there's no such thing as shitty weather, just shitty gear. Well, back in the 40s and 50s, there was nothing but shitty gear. Everything is made out of cotton and just wool, and it's none this and none that, and all of it's flammable, and that's what was happening in Japan at this time period. And the folks who are living there are feeling the pressures of life and daily life, etc., pretty readily as they continue on.
Every grain is precious and must be salvaged. All through the nation, every available plot is turned into garden, even amidst the wreckage.
In the middle of this scene, having now set this scene, you get 1952, I think it is, and my dates are, on and off variously, was the first, one of the very first broadcasts on television. It was on General Television, I think, was the only company who made televisions then. Had what was called the Mitsubishi Fight Man Hour. And AWA mean hour, H-O-U-R, okay? And Fight Man, well, you know, it's like Walkman. You know, who would think of that? Nobody in America would think of that word, Walkman. But it makes perfect sense. So you know what a fight man is. And just like in the United States, I think one of the first broadcasts on regular television in the United States was wrestling. To this moment, as I speak and breathe in front of you, wrestling is the most popular thing on American television. At any given time, there's 5 different channels of the Undertaker versus Stone Cold against the Grim Reaper versus the Thug Bros. Or whoever in a battle royale, thug fest, cage match, death fest. If nothing else, I'm getting the t-shirt. I may not actually attend the event, but I'm going to get on the internet right after this and purchase some merchandise. You just gotta. What I'm getting at is it's not an entirely new convention. And in 1952, I forget, you know, it may not be exactly that year, on the Mitsubishi Fight Man Hour, in one of these stadiums, holds about 20,000 people in eastern part of Tokyo, the Sharp brothers, a couple of fellas, big guys, like 6'6", come out of the Midwest in the United States, this is after the war, are touring around Asia, think more like carnival, more like circus than actual sporting event, and they're doing professional wrestling as we came to know the old school. You know, with the big Speedo type trunks and the big black boots, more like boxing boots, and you know, the Andre the Giant kind of an approach. And they versus a fella named Ricky Dozan, and I believe he had a partner. This was a tag team match. I don't recollect his partner's name. They are incalculably outweighed. Ricky Dozan is a one-name fella. He'd come from sumo, but he was not big enough to compete legitimately or, you know, successfully in sumo. He was only about 220, 245 pounds. That's nowhere near big enough to compete in sumo and actually win, but big enough to do professional wrestling, which was brand new to Japan and was brought there by the American service guys. They were going to be a lot of in attendance, you know, buying the ticket to actually go to the event. And this is, you know, who had televisions? Well, everybody on board ship, everybody on base had televisions in the rec rooms and the OCs, the officer clubs, and, you know, some of the barracks, etc., had televisions. Very few Japanese had televisions at all. They didn't even know what it was, much less what professional wrestling was. Ricky Dozan steps into the middle of the match, and there are maybe 3 different rounds, and for the first 2 rounds, he gets his ass handed to him. The Sharp brothers are 6'6", Benny Sharp or whatever, 6'6". These guys are huge. And they're throwing him around, and every possible insurrectionary, you know, every bad, false, every foul that you could possibly enact. Every time the referee turns his back, there's something that's some terrifying, awful, vicious poke or move or some subtraction of the rules. The referee never gets to see it. He has no idea what's going on. And, you know, the audience is beside themselves, you know, in this arena. They can't believe what's going on. They can't believe that the referee must be on the take, etc. And, you know, the despair is like a fog, as it was written about, as it is described by those who were actually there. It was like a fog, the despondent, depressing despair of loss again, which already hung over Tokyo like a sick, blackening cloud, Bible black and starless, sank even lower upon a group of people whose upon shoulders was already life was like a yoke. And then the 3rd round happened.
2本目の開始、まず力道山と弁でやります。力道山の首投げ。 続いて抱え投げ鈴木弱った弁に対しまして猛烈に繰り返
And Ricky Dozan came running out of the corner with his two famous moves, and he was not a great wrestler at all. Ricky had two moves. First was sumo pushing, which is just pushing and going like this. And then the second was the James Bond karate chop. And it's not actually called the James Bond karate chop. I happen to know it because I learned it from watching James Bond movies in the early 60s, is you chop somebody in the back of the head and they pass out instantly if you do it right. We practiced it on each other on schoolyards for many, many years. And occasionally it would work. And this was Ricky Dozan's two big moves. And he came racing out of the corner and taking on both of the Sharp brothers and began to take it to him. And the entire stadium went beyond ecstatic, it was incontainable, their ecstasy. And they began to tear up the chairs and behave in a most decidedly un-Japanese fashion. And nobody'd ever seen anything reaction like that in an audience at a sporting event like this. They totally believed that Ricky Dozan was for real. Nobody had any idea that this whole team had been instructed backstage by the American and Japanese promoters to approach this as a theatrical event. It was a show, and that it was not to be approached like as an athletic event. The real show was outside the doors of that arena. Ueno Station, for example, it's a train station that I use all the time. I'm always using the underground trains and stuff in Tokyo now. And there's probably 100 and some train stations, and at each station, at the Shibuya station, which is right across from Shibuya Crossing, the most busy intersection on earth. Shelley, put up some Shibuya Crossing footage. You can find this very easily. At Shibuya Station, there are almost 100 exits. So people get lost in this place. It's like a Tom Hanks movie or something. You could easily get lost in Shibuya Station. And keep entering. You could actually live there. You know, there's shopping malls and, you know, the whole thing connected. We call it Underground City, UG City. And I'm sure there's a businessman's hotel or something immediately adjacent. You would never have to surface. And so there are many, many train stations that have been there since before the war, but it was there since the turn of the century, since the 1800s. Japanese railway system was developed very, very early on. And at Ueno Station alone were 20,000 people. Let's kind of get in our mind's eye how many people that actually is. 20,000 people is Madison Square Garden sold out in the round. Not like a Van Halen show where we cut the end off because we have a great big stage, but like a Springsteen show, where there's people all the way around. Do you follow? 20,000 people is like Staples Center in Los Angeles. 20,000 people is like the big basketball arena full, wherever it is you live. And that's just one railway station. 20,000 people watching one television set, a 27-inch General TV, sitting on the back of an army truck, plugged into a generator. Can you imagine sitting in the back of a completely full 20,000 person sold out Madison Square Garden hockey arena, watching a small sized television set in black and white with 20,000 other people just even trying to focus on what's going on there. And everything would have to be rifled back. All of the info of what just happened and what foul was just enacted was all rifled back and passed back like that party game where you whisper to each other and the rumor grows and the insurrection and the horribleness increases until finally the ambulances were literally, this is all well documented, were working overtime, picking the bodies of those who had fainted, passed out. There were heart attacks, people who were already borderline chronic, some condition or another, slipped over the border because of their paroxysms of rage and despair. I'm only using these adjectives because these are the adjectives that after Ricky Dozan disposed of the Sharp brothers and became victorious, and everybody went crazy the very next day. The New York Times, the LA Times, the Chicago Times, the Dallas Times, and the Miami Times, all of those equivalents in Japan, put it on the front page headlines. Ricky Dozan retrieves the dignity of Japan. Ricky Dozan saves the souls of the future of the children of Japan and shows that Japan can transcend and transpire and can once again rise to the greatest heights of heights.
大きくゴーとばかりにマイクは倒れました。リングの中央、完全なフォールでやります。力道山の空手打ちのフォール決まりました。
Nobody really questioned for the longest period of time that Ricky was doing not only theater, but Ricky wasn't even Japanese. How very Japanese. Ricky Dozan came from Korea. And he took on one name, like the way the sumotori, the rikishi, the wrestlers in sumo do. They take on individual names. Sometimes they mean things like Raging Storm or Great Mountain. You get names like Mitozushi or Konishiki or Chonofuji. Sometimes they just sound good, but it's, you know, the way we do it in the United States is probably based on the way it's been done in sumo and in their version of professional wrestling long before we got started. Da Vinci, of all people, claimed that all great fine arts started with Japan or was exported from Japan or got stolen from Japan long before any of us white boys, quote unquote Europeans or anybody, discovered what was actually going on here. So if you consider professional wrestling and all of its variations a fine art form, and we do, then yeah, we got the idea from the Japanese. Take a single name and just call yourself the Undertaker instead of Kevin. Call yourself Stone Cold The Rock instead of Kenny. I'm down, I get this, whether it's in Japan, Nihongo or not, I'm with it, let's go. And so this is, again, this is an idea that is 1,000 years old. It's 1,000 years old. And Ricky Dozan had come from Korea, attempted to become sumotori, you know, trained in sumo, and was not big enough. He was okay, so-so, but you have to be huge. Now I'm leading up to something here, and all of this story about what wrestling means to the United States, what wrestling means to Japan. I'm going to try to explain. We're going to go back to the root of this instead of the fruit of it, because it all comes from sumo. And my pal in Tokyo here, Konishiki, is one of the most famous sumo wrestlers of all times. He was a great champion for many, many years. He still is involved, still trains, still competes, etc. Just to give you an idea, we're going to put some pictures up here, and I've been invited to go to the Basho, which is the tournament in January, middle of January, as his guest. We're going to go behind the scenes there. And I won't tell you his real name behind the scenes. I don't know if I'm supposed to. But Konishiki, for example, is not from Japan. Everybody knows that. He's from Hawaii. Takanahara and Takanawada were two brothers who I think came from Samoa. So there have been, kind of an influx of folks who are, super giant and, are big enough to compete in sumo. Ricky Dozan, which again is just fun to say. What a great name, Ricky Dozan. Somebody should start a pants company. Ricky Dozan, a silhouette of Ricky. But Ricky went on to wrestle for many, many years. And behind the scenes, like most of my favorite heroes, he was a hard-drinking, whoremongering. He was hooked up with organized crime. He was part of the Yakuza. Somebody finally killed him in a gang fight. He was knifed to death in the men's room of a nightclub called the Latin Quarter, or the New Latin Quarter, downtown in Tokyo. Yes! My kind of downtown guy. Ricky Dozan, the Ballad of. How come Bob Dylan never wrote this song? They had a Ricky Dozan. Not all is hard work at the Mojo Dojo. We're upstairs in the hallway that leads directly to my bedroom. And you can see in the background as we're passing by that these are all the gold and platinum records that I've earned over the years. Don't break into the house and try and steal them. They're worth nothing except sentimental value. In fact, I think they're just plastic Frank Sinatra records or something that have the little plaque on it, whatever. But the joke was for a long time that if I got the pretty girl to walk all the way the entire length of the hallway and she saw these records, it would cut my foreplay time neatly in half. By the time I got to Phoenix, she was usually waiting. Whoa, ha, ha, ha.